Hello, my friends. We are live. Once again, we got a special episode for you today. We have a lot of shows to planned today. Obviously, we got a roundtable coming up at 4 p.m. Eastern, but we got a special guest, host of the Jimmy Dore Show. Very excited for this conversation. Jimmy Dore, welcome to Hampton Leftists. How you doing, brother?
Thanks for having me back. Love your stuff.
Hey, I appreciate that. I want to invite you on. 'Cause I couldn't think of anyone better to rage against the machine than Jimmy Dore himself. Because what I focus on is foreign policy, class war, and state violence. And I often get really annoyed when I see people kind of distract for those issues. A lot of people they kind of focus on the culture war or whatever. But to me, the battle is against the national security state, and we need to create a counter to the corporate media propaganda that we are bombarded with every day. You guys see it with Afghanistan, where we have an infamous war criminal who's still expanding the U.S. Imperialism and war complex. They still giving them crap for his meager, small effort pull out of Afghanistan, even though he's still going to be investing resources for covert strikes that already killed children in Afghanistan. So I want to start off with that, Jimmy. I want to get your thoughts on Afghanistan, the corporate media response to that. What's your thoughts on Joe Biden actually, quote unquote, getting out?
So is it good that Joe Biden is pulling out troops from Afghanistan? Yes, that is great. Did it take courage for him to do that? It appears so, because the establishment media, again, they're not allowed to criticize a president for starting a war, but they're allowed to criticize a president for supposedly ending a war. So now I'm not going to bend over backwards giving Joe Biden compliments for doing this, because he's not ending empire. He's not. So that $300 million a day that Joe Biden and Barack Obama for 8 years spent in Afghanistan, which is what they did. So Joe Biden and Barack Obama didn't end the war in Afghanistan. They ramped up wars. They took us from 2 to 7. You know that. They did Libya. Right now, Joe Biden, while he's ending military occupation of Afghanistan, he's occupying a third of Syria. He's starting bombing in Somalia. So they're not, unless Joe Biden is going to take that $300 million a day that they used to spend in Afghanistan and now spend that money back here, he's not ending empire. He's just shifting it around. And people who are bending over backwards to give Joe Biden credit for Afghanistan need to start making that point now too. That, okay, it's great that he's ending the occupation of Afghanistan after 20 years that he was a super big part of, by the way. And but he's not ending empire. He's not taking that $300 million and putting it towards domestic causes. He's taking that $300 million and he's going to spread it around doing more empire shit. Am I wrong about that?
No, you're on point. Actually, Jackson Hinkle covered this on his stream, and he's actually going to join us tomorrow, and we're going to talk about this as well. And I was warning about this weeks ago, and we was talking about this on Hampton Leftists, where you had the Biden administration that was very open about their goal, and they said we wanted to end the ground troops in Afghanistan because they wanted to save resources to spread bomb in Africa and investing into the Cold War against Russia and China. And now you see, they openly said that during Biden's speech, they're still going to fight terrorism in Afghanistan. So what does that mean? So are you actually out or not? So if you're actually an anti-imperialist, why are you cheerleading this when Biden we're not actually out? What? Go ahead, Jimmy.
So what that means is Joe Biden and the American imperialistic, militaristic complex is going to now team up with the Taliban to fight ISIS. Again, we invented the Taliban, we invented ISIS, we invented Al-Qaeda, and now we're going to spend $300 million a day fighting those people. So this is exactly what Eisenhower warned us against, the undue influence of the military-industrial complex. And everybody thinks that's a joke that he said that. That wasn't a joke. That was a warning, and we didn't heed it, and here we are. And so our entire government is run by the military industrial complex, big pharma, Wall Street, and oil companies. And they all work in conjunction with each other because they want the same kind of politician, the one that's willing to be bought. And right now, we're talking about imperialism. People are going to call me a sexist because Kamala Harris is the vice president, and a racist, by the way, because Kamala Harris is a female and a woman of color, and I'm criticizing her. So that immediately gets me called a racist and a sexist, just like Bernie Sanders was called a sexist because he had the temerity to run against Hillary Clinton. You're not allowed to do that. So that made him a sexist. And right now, it's again, everybody's upset about what's happening.
Apparently, you're a sexist if you vote for Jill Stein in 2016. Yeah. Explain the logic in that.
I know. I voted for Jill Stein. I did. I voted for Jill Stein, and so that somehow makes me a sexist. So, and right now they're blaming. You see, they're blaming Bernie for running against Hillary Clinton 5 years ago for what's happening in Texas. I don't know how to tell these people this. But the Democratic Party controls the White House, the Senate, and the House of Representatives. They could do something if they wanted. They don't want to do anything.
Hey, it's a great fundraiser opportunity. They use it to fundraise, and that's exactly what they're doing. They don't have no plan. They don't actually care about stopping this. They voted for their judges.
So people still want to come back at me because I wouldn't vote for Hillary, and then the Supreme Court got appointed by Trump. Well, guess what? The Democrats didn't fight at all for their own nominee. They didn't fight against Trump, and they fast-tracked all Trump's judges. Chuck Schumer was in lot. You know why? Because they work for the same people. They work for the same donor class, and that's what you can't cross. So that's what Tulsi Gabbard crossed when she went against the CIA narrative on Syria. So she crossed the donor class's narrative, and they came down on her 100,000%. Now, does Tulsi Gabbard have, again, lots of problems like any politician? Yes. Does she deserve criticism on lots of stuff? Yes. Did she deserve criticism on telling the truth about Syria? No. Does that make her a Russian bot? No. She's actually serving in those god-awful bullshit imperialistic wars that Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden set up for us. She's actually in there serving. Right. And so when she tells the truth about it, they had to shut that down. Remember, Trump was horrible because of what he said about that Gold Star family. How dare you criticize a Gold Star family? But currently calling someone who's serving in those wars, you can call them a Russian bot. You can call them a traitor to your country. You can call them anything you want as long as they're alive, I guess. So that just goes to show you the power of the CIA narrative and the military industrial complex, because that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah, that's exactly my main thing. I criticize all politicians. I criticize the squad because Ilhan Omar and Jamal Bowman teamed up to give more weapons to Israel while they were literally committing a genocide in Palestine. And that's the same way I would criticize Toasty when I think she has a bad take. But I didn't never like the shit lib criticisms of Toasty. And I used to like her, but like all politicians, I criticize anyone who deserves criticism. Her recent takes were kind of cringe to me. But if you actually talking about this occupation, you got to be against imperialism. So when Toasty is like propping up the war on terror, that's implying like we can't support that. And when she's supportive of drone strikes, just like Bernie, you got to call that out. And like I said, and I know Toasty people got mad at me because I have a video out with Dr. Kareem Patesh. We had to talk about these kind of things and why she was wrong. But that same way, I call out Bernie Sanders and the squad. And we need real leftist leaders that are actually staunch anti-imperialists. And that's something that drives me crazy that we have none of that. None of these people are strong. They all repeat the same national security state propaganda. Hell, a lot of them for censorship. The new flow, the new way they can control flow of information. And that's something else that you flag all the time, and that's something I'm always want to raise awareness about is the national security state crack down on the freedom of the press so we can actually hold the government responsible. They cracking down on Daniel Hale. We've seen what they did to Julian Assange, and these are kind of issues that we got to take 100% seriously because this is a coordinated effort for them to lock down the flow of information. They are already kicking out people from YouTube, banning people from Facebook for no good reason. So they are limiting the flow, and the battle against corporate media is our biggest challenge right now. Because we can't have a revolution. We're not going to have a revolution if the corporate media is able to set the narrative. And we saw how they were trying to set the narrative with Afghanistan. It's funny how they cared about and this is their CIA tactic. They pretend to care about Afghanistan women, and they use that to drive the narrative towards more war. But then when Joe Biden killed innocent civilians with a drone strike, crickets. You had Jim Psaki that said that was a great strike, even though it killed 6 children in Afghanistan. The media that pretended to care about Afghans, all of a sudden, crickets. So that's what we got counter, right, Jimmy?
So you're pointing out the hypocrisy and the inconsistency of the establishment narrative in Afghanistan. Yes, of course, it's been 100% inconsistent. It's been 100% hypocritical. You listen to Bill Maher. Bill Maher says that the reason we're not the bad guys in Afghanistan, we're there trying to end oppression. That guy has a show on HBO.
What happened to these comedians?
And people say I'm uninformed. It's unfucking believable. If our military is somewhere, it's there to steal a natural resource from those people, or at the behest of Saudi Arabia or Israel, or that's it. Somehow we're dropping bombs for freedom. We're dropping bombs because
we have good intentions.
We care about women's rights. I'm like, oh, really? We've invented a pro-women's rights bomb? That's amazing. How does that work? So this is, again, the military. The news media is funded by the military-industrial complex and Wall Street, which, again, makes all their money off the military-industrial complex. So you're never going to get the truth, and that's right. So the problem is that the left is for censorship. We just saw that study that came out that Democrats, people who are Joe Biden voters, considered that are pro-censorship. And who would that include? That would include most of the people who call themselves YouTube lefties. So if you're for censorship, you're by definition not on the left, right? Just like if you're attacking the president from the right, you're not on the left. Like the way they attacked Trump for 4 years, which was wanting him to bomb more and be more bellicose and sable rattling with Russia with the nuclear power. That's not a lefty position. So a lot of people on the left, and you know who they are. I don't have to point. The Young Turks, they're the loudest pushers of censorship. They're super, and all those shows that are in their satellite, in their orbit, right? The David Doles, the Mike Figueredos, they're very pro-censorship. They're very defensive of politicians, of the establishment. So they're not anti-establishment. When you're defending Democrats, when you're defending AOC as she sells you out, when you're defending the Squad and the Justice Democrats as they take dark money and they start their own super PAC, and then they completely turn their back on what they ran on. When you still defend them, you're not on the left. You're now defending the establishment. You're defending, look, what I like to say is if you vote for a Democrat, right now, you're voting for Goldman Sachs because nobody in Congress is opposing Nancy Pelosi. We all know Nancy Pelosi serves the interest of the oligarchs and the establishment in Goldman Sachs. And Goldman Sachs has won, just like Chris Hedges says and Thomas Frank says, that Goldman Sachs has won every election since 1980. There's no getting around that. So when you're voting for a Democrat, you're voting for Goldman Sachs, and that's just the way it is. And I know that's hard for people to understand. Wait a minute. If I vote for a Justice Democrat, they say they're against all that stuff, but they vote for it. So their rhetoric does not match up with their actions. They're not fighting for you. They're never going to cross Nancy Pelosi. And that's the big problem. So if you go along with Nancy Pelosi, who are you going along with? You're going along with Goldman Sachs, the military-industrial complex, Big Pharma, and the oil companies, and Google, and Silicon Valley. So that's who the real oligarchs are. That's who you can't cross. And that's why the Squad aren't allowed to cross those people, because they won't get their book deals, they won't get their speaking fees, and they won't be in Congress for 5 years, so they get lifetime pension, lifetime health care. That's so the Squad and the Justice Democrats are a bunch of self-interested, self-dealers who don't care about what they give lip service to. They care about their own careers, and nothing has been made more manifest than that than this last year. They have how often have they used their leverage? 0 fucking times. And the only time they ever coordinated their vote was to make sure that the police got $2 billion more in funding. That's the only time they coordinated their vote. So if you need more evidence that they're 100% corrupt, and when I say corrupt, I mean they're acting dishonestly in their own interest. That's the definition of corrupt, not what Kyle Kulinski says. Kyle Kulinski says words matter, and the definition of corruption, he just makes up a definition. He just literally pulls a definition out of his ass about what corruption is. And I had to show it on my show, the definition from Webster's dictionary. And I think he stopped saying that stupid shit since then, but maybe not.
Yeah, you are on point because I thought we were supposed to be a policy-based movement. And I always say, like, because I bought into the strategy of the Justice Democrats at first. I was supportive of AOC and her race. And I remember you had AOC on your show at the beginning, Bernie Sanders campaign. But as things went on and as they continued to vote, the squad and these progressive politicians are actually very politically calculating. They are not as incompetent as a lot of people give them credit, because they coordinate their vote in a way where they will have heroes sometimes and then villains. Like, why will you do that? But then the person who's the villain, the next vote, they can be the good guy. And then the people who made the good vote, then they can have the shady decision. So you point out.
You saw even at when they did the sleep-in or whatever that was at the Capitol for 5 days. And you saw that when they were declaring victory, someone asked them a question, what are you going to do about the other 10% who aren't covered by this eviction moratorium? That's 1.1 million people. And they put their fingers in their hair and turned the music up and started dancing. So I don't know what that tells you, but that tells me that they're not sincere, that this was a coordinated stunt with the establishment, because they knew the Supreme Court would knock this down, and they used it as a fundraiser. And at the same time they were saying that, the Democratic Party was taking millions of dollars from the real estate industry. So we predicted on our show that the Supreme Court would knock this down, and that what they needed to do was make sure Congress came back in session, which is what they pretended they were really there for. And they never happened. So now why aren't they sleeping back out there? Because that eviction moratorium got taken away. Why aren't they sleeping on the steps of the Capitol to make sure Nancy Pelosi reconvenes the House? Because all those people are getting kicked out. Why do you think that is?
You know how many people got so mad at me because at Hampton Leftists, we was making the same prediction where they was running this victory PR tour. And I was talking about this with Max Blumenthal, who was actually calling them out at the steps. You have war criminals like Adam Schiff there doing photo ops with you people. They were responsible for the mess we are in. And Max Blumenthal was calling them out because they say the amount of money that you want to give to Israel every year can solve the homelessness crisis.
Yes.
So you guys are actually responsible for this. So why is Cori Bush giving these people a photo op? So it actually was a PR stunt from the very beginning. And yes. Even when they got the eviction moratorium that Biden approved, we said, like, the fight is not over. Why are you guys going on the victory lap? Franco Analysis was asking them this question. And do you know the wave of hate that this is why I'll turn it back to them, because they always the people that are always right about these things. They always call us the dumb left because we don't like their politicians. And that's the reason why. But they were the dumb left because they didn't see this coming. We said this was happening. They didn't see it coming. They was caught off guard. And then I was flagging that, and people was like, "Oh, the socialist made Nick. He just celebrating the fact that all these people go homeless." I was like, "No, I was just pointing out the fact that you guys was wrong, and I told you guys to get back to work." We said on our stream when this happened, Cori Bush, why are you celebrating? Get back to work. What are you doing? And people got mad when I said that.
So what I said on my show was, because they said, well, our 5-day protest moved mountains. That's a quote from Cori Bush. And I said, well, if a 5-day poorly attended protest, by the way, nobody showed up for the protest. Why do you think that is too? Why do you think they didn't invite people to come down? Why didn't they use their social media to get 100,000 people down there? Why didn't they want, the only people down there were mostly staff and sycophants, right? So there weren't, so whenever an activist showed up and asked them a question, they turned the music up and we're not going to answer any questions. So that because they weren't real, that wasn't a real protest. That's why. I forgot what I was going to say now.
Yeah, we have activists. Cori Bush is an activist. We have activists that are afraid to talk to other activists.
That's not an activist. That's not an activist. If you don't want to talk to the press and get your message out, because that's the problem activists always have. Nobody will cover us. They're always thirsty for press coverage, and then when someone gives them press coverage, they have their handlers getting between them. That's not an activist, and that's not an activist when you won't talk to other activists, but you turn the music on. That's what Hillary Clinton and the establishment oligarchs do. They turn on sound cannons because they don't want to hear the truth. They don't want to hear you advocating for people. That's exactly what that was. So when she said that we moved mountains with a 5-day poorly attended protest, my question is, why would you ever stop protesting? If you're able to get this with a 5-day poorly attended protest, what could you get for 5 days more with a better attended? You probably get student debt relief. You probably get a living wage. You probably get marijuana rescheduled. You probably get that $300 million that we're spending in Afghanistan every day reinvested back here at home. You could get anything you wanted. Why would you ever stop if you could move mountains with a 5-day poorly attended protest? That reveals the fucking lie that protest was a protest. That was a coordinated stunt with Nancy Pelosi. She was okay with it. The leadership of the Democratic Party was okay with it. So that's not a protest. You're not crossing the establishment or the oligarchs. And it's been manifest because we don't have an eviction moratorium. And where the hell are they now?
I was having a lot of fun with this because a lot of these people, their politics is only following the Justice Democrats and the squad. And what the squad, what they really did, instead of shifting what it means to be socialist to the left, they actually shifted what it means to be a socialist to the right, where you have people that are happy even though we're not canceling rent. There was millions of people that was slipping through the cracks, and they was allowing to go homeless, but we were supposed to be 100% okay with this. And this is a failure of them as leftist leaders. The fact that they're not even willing to challenge the establishment the way we want them to do, because they proved us right. So I was having a lot of fun with this because a lot of people that were defending the squad, they said that our efforts to get them to force the vote, that they were like, oh, you guys want to prop up the Medicare for All march, that you guys want them to actually wield their power to actually shut stuff down to get a progressive agenda. They say, oh, you guys are being unrealistic. But then Cory Bush does this stunt, and then they're like, see, this is why you guys should like the squad. Like, no, this proves me right, because we said this is what you should be doing all the time over all these issues. Right. Like, why aren't you helping us organize strikes? Why aren't you showing up to the Medicare for All rallies? Why aren't you actually speaking up against ending the war? You can do the same thing. And because you guys are the most popular politicians, where you guys go, and when you guys do a stunt like this, the media will follow you whether they like it or not, especially if you actually like engage with independent media, because they have this horrible strategy where they're like, okay, we're going to rely on corporate media to tell our story. They don't want to talk to independent media. Now, if you actually use independent media the right way, you can amplify your message. You can shut down corporate media talking points, and we could have your back. But instead, they actually shun that side away. And then they hold these half-measure actions, and then we would call them out. The squad defenders get upset at us. We like, there's no end game. You have people at the protest, like Franco, for example. They was like, what's the end game here? Can't ask those questions. You're being mean. That's going against civility politics if you do that. So go ahead, Jimmy.
It's ironic that every time AOC speaks, she talks about how we have to make the ruling class uncomfortable, how we have to make politicians uncomfortable. She even said at the steps of the Capitol that we have to have confrontation. We have to have confrontation, and we have to stop talking nice, and we have to make people uncomfortable. This is what she doesn't realize, that when we do it to her, she says we're being racist, sexist, and violent. So again, just as if you read Listen Liberal, Thomas Frank talks about how they know all the words of activism, they know all the words of leftyism, and they know all the words of democracy. They ought to pay fealty to democracy as they do the bidding of the oligarchs. And that's exactly what the squad and the Justice Democrats are doing. They have their own dark money fucking super PAC now. They're taking money from George Soros. They're taking money from people who don't even know who it is because it's dark money. So they became the exact thing they were supposed to be fighting against. And now they're propping up the establishment. And when you point that out, they attack activists. They attack people who are pointing out that they're being going along with the establishment, and they get half the left to go along with it. That's what Force the Vote revealed, that people who claim to be on the left aren't really on the left, right? So even people who were for Force the Vote at the beginning, then they got the phone call from the establishment, and they were like, oh, we got it, we can't do it now. Why? Because Jimmy Dore, that's all they got. You saw Brianna Joy Gray's interview, right, with the NBC contract, and all was just about Jimmy Dore. That's all it was. It was nothing else. So those people have MSNBC contracts. Those people like Cenk Uygur take millions and millions of dollars from DNC donors and the establishment, and then they pretend that they're independent media and they're fighting for you. What they're doing is they're the ones keeping you from real activism. They're the ones like Cenk Uygur and the Young Turks and people with MSNBC contract and Ryan Grimm at The Intercept. Could they be more exposed as fucking tools for the establishment? No, they couldn't be. And that's why they're coming after me as hard as they come after me. They're even willing to be anti-science to come after me. We saw that with The Intercept. So it's amazing what's happening. And what we need to have happen now is for people to stop thinking there's someone inside the Democratic Party fighting for them, either party, right? Because there isn't. And what keeps happening is the progressive energy keeps getting redirected into the Democratic Party, where, as Shama Sawant points out, it meets a graveyard. So we get that progressive energy, and then they get people who are who look like us, right? They get black and brown people and females and all kinds of to flare their identity politics to distract you from the fact that they're going right along with the oligarchy and the establishment screwing you, and they're not using their leverage to help you. And what we need to have people realize is that nobody inside the Democratic or the Republican Party is going to help you. And so what is that? But until that happens, we can't have change. Until people who are progressive and activists on the left realize that the Democratic Party is a dead end, that no matter what you think, no matter how, no matter what kind of lip service, no matter how sweet their speech is to you, no matter how much fucking lip service they give you, they are not fighting for you. So stop putting your energy into the Democrat and Republican parties. And what we need to do is look outside those two parties. And until people do that, until they stop donating to the Democratic Party, until they stop voting for the Democratic Party, there will be no change electorally in the United States. And right now, even when you try to do an activism, when you try to get into the streets and do a direct action like we did in 50 different cities with the Medicare for All march, nobody will cover it. Half the left, like the Young Turks, David Dole, Humanist Report, they don't even show up for the fucking thing. And what do? They shit on it. Just like Ryan Grimm at The Intercept did. They shit on people who are advocating in the streets for Medicare for All. That's where we're at. So there is no left in America. And so we got to call these motherfuckers out, because that's all they're there to do, is to stop progress. People like The Intercept, Ryan Grimm, Cenk Uygur, and all the shows that are in his satellite. Those are people who all they're there is, just like the Squad, for their own self-aggrandizement, for their own personal interest. They're willing to sell you out for censorship, for the celebrity of politicians. They are never going to fight for you. They're never going to be in the street fighting for you, and they're never going to stick your chin out. They're never going to, like we do here, like you do, like we do at my show, to stand up and call out the establishment and the oligarchs, even when they're wearing the same clothing that we do, when they're pretending to be activists, when they're pretending to fight for Medicare for All. We have to call them out, even when they're pretending to do that. They didn't even show up at that march. 50 different cities. Bernie Sanders wasn't there. None of the Squad was there. Cori Bush showed up to one of the marches, but she didn't speak because she didn't agree with the demands. She wasn't on board with Medicare for All protests. So until people realize that the Democratic Party is there to distract you, that the Justice Democrats are there to take your progressive energy and put it in a graveyard inside the Democratic Party, until people realize that, until they stop voting for them, until they stop donating to them, there will be no progress in America. Because Joe Biden is the reason we got Donald Trump. He was in the White House for 8 fucking years with Barack Obama, and they gave us right-wing corporatist policies. They kicked 5.1 million families out of their houses in a similar economic situation. 5.1 million families. They didn't give them help. They didn't give them mortgage relief. They fucking kicked them out of their houses. They gave their houses to the Wall Street, who they just bailed out while they were giving you a right-wing healthcare plan, when they had complete filibuster-proof control of the goddamn Congress and the White House. That's what they did. And then they deported more Hispanics than all the presidents combined since 1890. You know that Donald Trump deported less Hispanics, almost by half, than Barack Obama did in his first term? Did you know that? So this idea that you had to vote for Joe Biden or Barack Obama because you care about Mexicans, immigrants, or Hispanics is a complete fucking sham. Donald Trump wasn't as bad for Hispanics as Joe Biden. Joe Biden right now, they've got way more people in cages. No one seems to give a shit about that anymore. You remember when, after Trump was elected, they used to go, and Maxine Waters said, confront these people. They would go into restaurants and they would confront the members of the Donald Trump administration. Do you remember that? Well, now it's even worse. Why aren't they doing that with the Biden administration? Do they not care about poor black and brown people who are being kept in cages anymore? The answer is no. They don't fucking care. They only cared when it was a dunk on their political opponent.
Well said, Jimmy. This is exactly why we brought you on. No one better to rage against the machine with. There is so much to break down there. And you mentioned a lot of names, and this is why when I had to talk about these people, I usually focus on the core issues like the class war, state violence, foreign policy. So when I have to talk about these people, I'm not about drama, it's about the issues. And you guys are just wrong on the issues. And a lot of what you talking about earlier, you have a lot of these people in the boutique left that we like to call them. We like to call them the old left. We are the new left that all about solidarity and having direct action against the government. I want a straight up proletariat revolution where we have mutual aid structures that can support ourselves and have horizontal solidarity. That's what I want to happen. But a lot of these people, they want to invest.
You know what's going to happen if you actually do that is they're going to kill you, right?
I'm ready for that. I'm ready for that.
Not kidding. If you're successful in doing that, they will kill you.
They will smear you too.
Well, that's what they do first. So you saw what happened when all I did was interview someone who considers himself a Boogaloo Boy. First of all, the first thing they do is they conflate Boogaloo Boy with Proud Boys. Those aren't the same thing. That the guy I brought on my show said he was protecting Black Lives Matter. He was pro-LGBTQ. In fact, he said he was gay himself. And they're anti-cop and they're anti-imperialism. Well, that's what's called when you're going to organize along class lines. That's what that is. So you have to find people on the right that agree with what you agree with, and then you work on that. And so that's when people say, I want to organize along class lines, they don't mean that. So that's the boutique left saying we have to organize along class lines. Organizing along class lines means what Fred Hampton did. You organize with right wingers who agree with you on certain issues. That's what and they'll never do that. So those boutique people are automatically rendering themselves ineffectual because they'll never actually organize along class lines. That's not how organizing works. I've been in unions my whole life. You don't go to the union shop and go, hey, who here is a right winger? You're out. Who here is a gun nut libertarian? You're out. Who here is a Proud Boy? You're out. Who here is a Trump voter? You're out. Who's a Boogaloo Boy? You're out. Now I'm going to organize who's left. That's not how organizing works. Of course, you know, most of the union workers in the Midwest lots of them were Trump voters. And so those are the people you have to have a message for. And that's not what they're going to do. So if you ever do that, I just interviewed a guy. And before my interview with him, I said, I don't endorse this guy. I don't endorse the Boogaloo Boys. I don't endorse anything because I don't know anything about him. I just want to start a conversation and see what happens. And to do that, I got 2 hit pieces written about me. Newsweek magazine and I think New York magazine.
Yeah, so I remember that. I remember that whole thing happening. And people got mad at me for my response. And there were so many people that are deeply unserious when it comes to building a movement and actually challenging power. And that shows when we have these conversations. My brother RJ on Revolutionary Jargon had Magnus on, and they was promoting the End the War protest, a direct action that they are doing to protest the wars. So this is the stuff that we have to do to go against our national security state, the corporate oligarchy that we are fighting. This is how we win. Now, I call these people deeply unserious because I discuss this issue so many times. I break down why they are so wrong on this issue and why they're not even really thinking about it. So you know what we say all the time on Black Twitter, and you know what a lot of people agree with me on? It is not Black people's job to convince white people not to be racist. Now let me repeat that. It's not our job to do that. It is the job of the white community to get white allies and turn them to not to be racist. Now, if we do that, I do that sometimes because it's kind of fun and it's pretty easy to do actually when you connect people on issues. And this is why a lot of people who are against building these class solidarity lines, look at where they're from. I noticed this. You look at where they're from. They're all from New York, California. They're in deep blue states. They live in deeply white suburbanite communities where they're not really exposed to the working class on either side, the Black working class, the white working class. I sold cars in Kansas. I traveled for the Bernie Sanders campaign and knocked on countless doors and talked to countless conservatives. And people who don't have these conversations, they have this view of what someone who is conservative is. They think everyone who is conservative, they think they like Ben Shapiro. They think like Dave Rubin. They think they're like any of these Fox News, Jeanine Pirro, any of these Craig Bill. Like, that's not the average conservative voter, whether you believe it or not. I know because I actually talk to these people. You guys need to go out and touch grass and actually have real conversations with people. Because a lot of these people, and I'll give you guys an example of a white ally that I approve of. My friend Rob, he here in Kansas City, he has a lot of racist family members. And you know what liberals do? And they think they have the moral high ground. They say, oh, I will never, ever associate with racists. I will never talk to them. And my response is, you're not helping me. You're not doing nothing to help me. But what he does, he actually converts these racist people to leftists. Now, if they was to follow what they criticize you for, they would say, oh, you shouldn't even be talking to these people. So we shouldn't even have net gains. Isn't that what we're trying to do? Remember when Bernie ran, we used to brag about the amount of Republicans that used to support Medicare for all. Right. I used to brag about that, but now people are like, oh, you getting Republicans to organize with Medicare for all? I thought that was the goal.
So when I went out and marched and gave a speech for Medicare for all, I was advocating for Medicare for all, not just for Democrats, not just for progressives, not just for environmentalists or lefties. I was advocating Medicare for all. That means Trump voters. That means right wingers. That means gun nuts. That means crazy racists like Joe Biden. Even people like that, I think, should have Medicare for all. Even crazy authoritarians like Kamala Harris, I think, should have Medicare for all. I think crazy right-wing murderous warmongers like Barack Obama should have Medicare for all. I think everybody should have Medicare for all, just not people we like. I'm advocating for Medicare for all. And that's why it's important when you organize something like that, you get people who aren't in the same political lane that you are, because that shows the wide support, and that's what scares the shit out of them. If you get a bunch of Greens or a bunch of lefties or a bunch of progressives screaming, they can ignore you. But when you get people on the left and the right and the middle screaming, it's harder to ignore those people, and that's why they have to squelch that even harder. And they have to make people like me, who are actually marching and speaking out for Medicare for all, to try to make people think I'm some kind of a sneaky right winger, as I'm advocating for ending the wars, Medicare for all, living wage, and student debt relief, and ending the drug war. Somehow they want to conflate that into right-wingerism as they get in the way of people like us trying to get a vote on Medicare for all. When the Young Turks and the Intercept, Ryan Grimm, ran interference against Force the Vote, what they were doing was they were keeping us from health care at the aid of the establishment. They were protecting the establishment from actual activists. And if that wasn't true, if that's not true, where was Ryan Grimm and Cenk Uygur and the Young Turks during the 50-state Medicare for All march? What is the reason why they weren't out there? There is no reason, just like there still is no reason why they shouldn't be for Force the Vote. There was never a legitimate reason. The only reason is they're in bed with the people they're pretending to advocate against. Cenk Uygur's in bed with the establishment. Jeffrey Katzenberg doesn't give you $24 million if he thinks you're going to upset the apple cart. He gave that to Cenk Uygur because they are controlled opposition, and we got to call these pieces of shit out all the time.
If you try to build a movement to get Medicare for all, if you try to build a movement to end the war, they'll say, "Oh, look, Red Brown Alliance." Yeah, Red Brown Alliance. That's their go-to.
Those people saying Red Brown Alliance, why didn't you show up at the Medicare for All march and fucking interview some of those people and tell them how they're propping up a Red Brown Alliance as they don't have fucking health care? Why don't you do that and see how fast it is that you get the fucking ass handed to you? Because they'll never do that. They're just a bunch of fucking cul-de-sac babies whose corporate lawyer parents put them through Ivy League schools, and if they ever got near a worker, and worker would punch them in the fucking face.
These people hate the people they claim they advocate for. They don't even want to talk to them. They don't want to be seen with them. That was the mindset. They didn't want to be seen with the Medicare for All activists because the squad and the progressive boutique managerial left, they see us as deplorables. They don't want to be so like you hate the people you claim you fight for. And people understand why I'm upset. I'm part of the proletariat that you don't want to be seen. I'm not college educated. I am rough around the edges. And you would judge every single working class black person based on the rhetoric that I've seen. Because we are not perfect people. And I've seen they attack any activist or any organization because they're not perfect people. I'm sorry to break it to you. I'm not perfect. My neighbor's not perfect. My brother's not perfect. We all need to continue to grow as people. So what I want to say, and I've been covering this on my show, and I'm glad this has resonated with a few people, because a lot of the actors that we are talking about, they hate when you bring this up. Because we had the Freedom of the Information Act, they revealed how the CIA infiltrates our movements. And this is something that's been living rent-free in my head for years, ever since I learned about this. And what they do, they always advocate caution. They always say you gotta make decisions that go through certain channels. I can bring up the receipt to show you guys. I covered this on my show multiple times, the list. And number 4 on that list was keep bringing up issues as many times as you can. So I remember the Medicare for All march. They booked a speaker who was an infiltrator. Okay, we dealt with that. we handled that, and that was a problem that was weeks and weeks old. But these same bad faith actors say like, "Oh, you fell for this trick. You booked this neo-Nazi or whatever." I don't know how to do background, but they kept using that for weeks and weeks and weeks to attack the movement. Meanwhile, we moved on. We're trying to make the movement better. We're trying to grow the movement. We have doctors. We have nurses. We have real activists that were showing up. Meanwhile, these CIA leftists, they were constantly trying to bring up these problems to kill momentum for the movement. And whenever we have things like force to vote or any action that we have, like whenever we want to call for like canceling rent, they're like, "Oh, you gotta be cautious." The whole thing is ease and caution. They don't want us to move forward. They say things gotta go through certain channels, the channel of the Justice Democrats. If it's not Justice Democrats approved, if you don't shut up and trust the plan, you should not advocate for it, and it will smear you if you do. And this is why I do not tolerate these deeply unserious people. Because now I'm gonna go back to the other conversation we was having, because let's have a conversation. And this is a hard conversation for white leftists to have about what it means to actually be anti-racist. Because I talked to Magnus, and I understand he had bad takes before. I had bad takes before. But what else do you want someone to do other than denouncing racism, fighting police violence like he has done? He is against for defunding the police. He for ending the wars. Now, this is what I am proposing to you. I'm not asking you to defend this guy. I am saying that if you are for giant police budgets, if you are voting to give weapons to Israel, like Ilhan Omar, Jamal Bowman did to be complicit with the genocide in Palestine, if you are complicit with funding the police more with your votes, are you anti-racist?
No.
Because my question is no. So if you're saying I can't work with this guy because you're like, "Oh, he's a racist," you got to prove to me that you're not a racist. Because what the progressive movement has done, I'll toss it right back to you, Jimmy, they sold us out to the police state. That's what I mean. I said the progressive movement has sold out black people to the police state because they keep funding for the budgets. They're silent now that ICE is literally committing human rights violations on the border. They are literally implementing forced labor. They are literally forfeiting people who are hunger striking because the conditions are so bad. And you guys are silent on those issues of state violence, but you think you're anti-racist? So I give people the benefit of the doubt until proven otherwise. So when I see someone that organized to end the war marches, when I see someone that's against the police budgets who want to give my community health care, I'm like, okay, I'll give this guy benefit of the doubt. But for you guys who for bombing Africa and all these other countries, for you guys who are for pro-police budgets and for imperialism, I don't trust you. That's what you don't understand. You guys assuming that I should have your trust, and you don't have it. Because you guys are not showing it in your activism. You are siding with the police state. I'm sorry, Jimmy. I'll toss it back to you. What's your thoughts?
I'm loving it. You're 100% right. The squad sides with the police state. They side with imperialism. They side with Joe Biden. And Joe Biden's the biggest racist, warmongering, imperialist, black, anti-worker voice in the country. And he's been that way for 40 years. It's nothing new. He's the one who said he didn't want his kids growing up in a racial jungle. I don't know if you remember, Kamala Harris tried to end his presidential campaign by calling him a racist. So these are the people who are voting for racists, and then they're going to call someone else a racist. Joe Biden is a huge racist. Joe Biden actually kills people of black and brown all over the world. And he does it with impunity. He just did it in Afghanistan. He just killed women and children. And before that, 2 weeks before that, he bombed a school and a med clinic, which killed 20 women and children. So this idea that Joe Biden is not a war criminal like Donald Trump is wrong. Often you can point to the damage done to this country by Joe Biden is much worse than the 4 years that we had under Donald Trump. In fact, just as I predicted, Donald Trump was not allowed to deport as many Hispanics as Joe Biden and Barack Obama. He wasn't allowed to put as many in cages as Barack Obama. He wasn't allowed to gas them. You know, Barack Obama gassed immigrants at the border. He did that. And I guess they should be honored that they were gassed by the lesser of two evils. So again, we have this idea that the Democratic Party is going to make things better. They're only going to make things the way Wall Street wants. That's what the Democrats are going to do. You're going to get as much health care as Wall Street will allow you to have. You're going to get as much ending of the wars as Wall Street will allow you to have. So you're not getting anything. You're not going to get student debt relief. You're not going to get a living wage. You're not going to get marijuana rescheduled because private prisons need to keep them full. All that shit, okay? And so voting for the Democratic Party is a vote against your own interest. People love to make it fun of right-wingers that they vote against their own interest. What the fuck do you think voting for Democrats is? Oh, no, they give me lip service. Well, so does the right-wing politicians. Donald Trump says he was going to give everybody health care, he was going to give everybody a job, and he was going to end the wars. Remember that? That's why a lot of people voted for him. He didn't give you health care, he didn't give everybody a job, and he didn't end the wars. Well, the Democrats say the same thing. I'm going to give you a $15 minimum wage. I'm going to give you health care, and we're going to end the war. They don't fucking do any of it. They're not even ending student debt relief. They're not giving you student debt, nothing. I live in California where it's a supermajority Democrats. They control, again, the supermajority. They can do whatever they want. Plus, they have Gavin Newsom, who's a Democrat. Right now, they're going to recall Gavin Newsom as the governor. Why? Because when the Democrats are in power, everyone's life gets worse. They won't fucking do anything for you because they're beholden to their donor class. Exactly. Why is it hard for the Democrats to retain power when they get in power? Why are they going to lose the House in fucking 2022? Why? Because they don't do anything to make people's lives better.
Man, so there's so many things to say from there. Now, I kept making this point, and no one from the Vote Blue No Matter Who crew, which includes progressives apparently, I kept saying I'm willing to hear the argument. Who has done more damage to the black community in the last 40 years than Joe Biden? So you guys are expecting young black men who was victims of Joe Biden's crime bill. I shared my story multiple times how I was a victim of Joe Biden's bankruptcy bill. And you mentioned how under Democratic cities, the people's lives do not get better. The Democratic Party is the party of the police state. We just have massive protests. That's something that kicked out in a Democratic state. Derek Chauvin wasn't prosecuted by Amy Klobuchar. It's New York that implements stop and frisk. California runs the LAPD. These are Democratic cities. If you look at who is funded by the police more, it's Democratic senators. They take more police money than the Republicans do. Do you guys remember Tommy Tuberville? And this is the joke of the two-party system and why I don't buy two lesser two evils. Do you guys remember Tommy Tuberville when he won? He was, oh my God, this unhinged Trump support, right-wing, unhinged lunatic goon. That's who Tommy Tuberville is. He introduced a bill that made it so the federal government can put penalties on local governments that decide to defund their police.
Right.
And that was voted 99-0. The Democratic Party sided with Tommy Tuberville over you, the person that we were supposed to be afraid of. And this was also obvious because during the Joe Biden campaign, he was running to Trump's right on law enforcement. He said it on the national debates, and the progressives was lying to black people and saying that this is how you got vote against white supremacy by voting for Joe Biden. And what I was saying, and what got so many people mad, well, I was like, this does not make sense because the police and the military-industrial complex is a white supremacist institution. So if you have someone who's propping that system up, that means you're not siding with the anti-racist team. And there are a lot of people they coping with it now. A lot of people, their Trump derangement syndrome is starting to wear off. So now they realize who they actually voted for. You guys voted for the segregationists. You guys voted for the guy who implemented the new Jim Crow, and he is cranking down on the drug war. He could easily he could easily end the drug war with the stroke of a pen. But he escalated. He actually agreed with Trump on mandatory minimums.
He's currently, right now, Joe Biden is currently escalating the drug war. He's not.
Yeah.
As he wants everybody to feel sorry for his drug addict kid, he wants to put your kid in the same situation in jail. Isn't that amazing? It's that. So the rules for you, not for thee. So it's unfucking believable. And again, you have people defending that. People who voted for Joe Biden are going to call somebody else a racist. That's just mind-blowing to me how they could get away with that.
I call it out.
That's establishment groupthink herd mentality. You saw it with Syria, this groupthink establishment mentality. People at the Young Turks called me a conspiracy theorist who was a gas attack denier. I was called that at the Young Turks. Again, turns out I was right, and they're the ones repeating CIA talking points every fucking day. They're still telling you that we should be intervening in Syria. Cenk Uygur went and lied on the Hill and said that I've never been for bombing Syria, and of course I've got a video where for 10 minutes he argues with me for bombing Syria, trying to find every way in the world to get me to convince that we should bomb Syria. And he's like, what if it helps people? I go, if they're bombing somewhere, it's not because Barack Obama or Donald Trump or Joe Biden gives a shit about the people of Syria. If they cared about helping people, they would get clean water to fucking Flint, Michigan. They would get health care to their own people. They would get education and a living wage to their own fucking people. They don't give a shit about people. They're doing the bidding of their fucking donors straight up. And quit being a dupe on purpose.
A lot of people are just they're cowards who won't punch up. That's really what it is. And
of course, look at all the hits I took for telling the truth about the squad. Look for all the hits I took for telling the truth about the Democratic Party, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, and Barack Obama. Look at what I was called for telling the truth about Barack Obama, which is exactly what Tavis Smiley and Dr. Cornel West have been doing for 8 years. But when I did it, I got called a fucking racist because that's all the establishment has now. They're going to call you a sexist and a racist first. That's the first thing they do now. They don't ever engage your argument. The first thing they do is they call you a racist and a sexist, and then the next thing they do is they call you a right winger, and that's all they have. And then they censor you. So this is all the establishment has left, and then they have people like the Intercept and the Young Turks to do their bidding to take the energy away from the progressives. That's all the Young Turks and the Intercept is there to do. They're there to take the progressive energy, put it inside the Democratic Party so we can meet a graveyard. That's their job, and they're fucking doing it. Watch how many more millions of dollars Cenk Uygur is going to get from the establishment. I wonder.
I don't know if you saw the video where
Ryan Grimm takes checks not from one billionaire. He takes checks now from 3 billionaires. He gets a check from Pierre Omidyar. He gets a check from the guy at the Hill, who's a billionaire, and he gets a check from Jeffrey Katzenberg, who bought the Young Turks. He gets a check from 3 different billionaires, and that's the guy who's your progressive hero, who's running interference for politicians as they sell you out. That's what the Young Turks are. That's what the Intercept is. That's what Ryan Grimm is. And as Glenn Greenwald said, the Intercept is shit.
You see David Dore, of all people, who blocked me because I called out one of his racist friends, but that's a story for another day.
He got caught by Justin Jackson lying about forced to vote.
Yeah, exactly. And he called you
lying about forced to vote. David Dole got caught lying about forced to vote by Justin Jackson on Twitter. I immediately invited David Dole on my show to talk about it, and he blocked me.
Yeah, these people, they shut down because he blocked me too because I was in the right. I ratioed them to oblivion over an issue that'll take too long to explain. But he was one of the people. He came out with a video recently, and these people are lying to their. I feel bad for their audience. They are lying to their own audience. And I listen to a lot of the other people, all the same people that attack forced to vote, the same people that smear you as right wingers. And it's easy to spot out because they started doing the same thing to me. I'm like. It's very weird, and people don't understand when you see a smear campaign against you. I had it on a smaller scale, and you know it's BS. I'm like, and I see the same thing with you because he was like Jimmy Dore, yeah, he's a right winger, he's cultivating a right wing audience, and I'm like, he was at the Medicare for All march, you wasn't. So what this doesn't make he voted for Joe Biden. How can anyone who
I voted for Jill Stein and Howie Hawkins. I was at the Medicare for All. Again, of course they're going to call me a right winger. That's all they got. They got censorship and smears. That's all they have.
They attack people to their left and they gaslight people who probably don't follow politics that much, and they convince people. And I've seen people that I'm like, you had decent opinions, so why would you repeat this nonsense? And they use the left-right conflict as a way to judge their own morality. They're very deeply unserious. They don't actually focus on the issues. And I've been calling this out. So you are left wing if you like their politicians, you agree with their strategies. You're right wing if they don't like you, if you say stuff like it has nothing to do with policy. I'm like, guys, there are legitimate criticisms. You can have everyone, but when you guys being deeply dishonest and calling someone who is to the left of the Democratic Party a right winger, when you vote for the Democratic Party, I'm gonna call that out because that doesn't make sense. But go ahead, Jimmy.
As AOC said, the Democratic Party is not a left-wing party. It's a right-wing party. She said that. So when you vote for Joe Biden, you're voting for right-wingers. I don't vote for right-wingers. I vote for people who care about workers and care about what everyday people go through. That I'm not voting for a fucking oligarchy anymore. And that's what those people are doing. So of course they have to punch left if you fucking get to the left of them. So I've been saying this since Hillary Clinton, that when you get to the left of someone like the Young Turks or David Dole or somebody like that, or somebody with an MSNBC contract, when you get to the left of them, what they first do is they don't gauge your argument. What they do is they just smear you first. That's what they do. they smear you. Can you imagine taking $24 million from Wall Street, right-wingers and DNC donors, and calling anybody else a right-winger after you got caught lying about forced to vote? Cenk Uygur flat out lied and said Kevin McCarthy could become speaker. Why doesn't Ryan Grimm have to answer for that? That's his boss, Cenk Uygur. Why doesn't he have to answer for that? He didn't call Cenk Uygur out for those lies. He came on my show, Ryan Grimm, and told everybody that Kevin McCarthy could not become speaker. Cenk Uygur, his boss, runs around for 2 months telling everybody that Kevin McCarthy is going to become speaker, and the DC bureau chief from The Intercept didn't say a fucking thing about it. But he did attack me, and he did attack forced to vote activists, but not the guy lying about it who's taking $24 million in Wall Street cash. Isn't that interesting? So do you need to have this case made anymore that what we're up against is infiltrators and pretenders on the left who are taking right-wing Wall Street money? Again, Ryan Grimm gets paid by 3 different billionaires, and you think that fucking guy is on your side? That guy is there to defend the oligarchy and the establishment at all costs, or he loses his fucking $1 million a year jobs. That's what's going on.
And this is why I have covered the class war, and people wonder why I call out the fake progressives, because I think it's very relevant to the class war, because the people you listed, these people are very class loyal leftists.
That's right.
And that's why I think
that's why you saw Anna Kasparian shit on the homeless. She's like, the homeless are a problem. They're criminals. They're coming after at the same day that her boss, Jeffrey Katzenberg, was lobbying the LA City Council to make homelessness a crime. And they did it. So she got her wish. Anna Kasparian and the Young Turks criminalized homelessness, and they didn't report on it critically. And they'll never mention that Jeffrey Katzenberg was lobbying to make homelessness criminal. And they did, because they're getting their money from him. And they need another $20 million because nobody watches the fucking Young Turks anymore. Go to their playlist. No one's watching their videos except if it's about Trump or some fucking crazy right winger like the Pillow Guy or me. Nobody else watches their show. If they do a video on the homeless, no one watches it. They do a video on Syria, nobody watches it. They do a video on the minimum wage, nobody watches it. Nobody watches anything that the Young Turks is doing anymore except their clickbait bullshit. They're still doing Trump videos 8 months after fucking Joe Biden became president. They're still doing Trump videos. That's who we're up against. We're up against complete bullshitting, gaslighting, controlled opposition. That's what the Young Turks are. That's what The Intercept is. That's what Ryan Grimm is. That's what all those shows in their satellites are. And that's what Forced to Vote revealed, that all those people are controlled opposition. Look what Nathan J. Robinson, current affair. So that guy, Nathan J. Robinson, right? He came at me. He said, I'm too toxic. I'm too mean. And I always attack the left. That's what oh, really? Guess what he did? Not only did he attack the left, he fucking fired everybody for trying to organize at his magazine. They tried to organize, so he fired them. That's not attacking the left. That's actually becoming a right winger and taking the economic legs out from underneath the left. That's exactly what Nathan J. Robinson did. The guy he's 33 years old. I don't know why anybody fucking where he came from, what he ever accomplished in his life, why people listen to him. He's a shitty writer, and that fucking guy is at the wrong side of every issue. Of course he came after us. We're real activists. We're in the streets advocating for Medicare for all. So a puke like Nathan J. Robinson is going to attack us because he's there to defend the fucking establishment, because he is the establishment. Where the fuck does Nathan J. Robinson get his fucking money from? And where did that guy come from? He came from Harvard, right? I fucking know that. He certainly didn't come from being a bricklayer like I did. That's not where he comes from. Again, I'm sure his fingers are fucking clean as a whistle, and his fingernails would fucking, if you dropped a brick on it, they'd be over. So what I'm saying is that people like Nathan J. Robinson, Ryan Grimm, Cenk Uygur, and all the people, Anna Kasparian, all the people around them are there to make sure lefty policies don't happen. And because whenever a chance happens for them, they come in and kneecap it or right out fire them like Nathan J. Robinson. He attacked me on Twitter because I wasn't a good enough lefty, because I am fucking sick and tired of controlled opposition. He's controlled opposition, and he's here to try to squelch voices like yours and voices like mine and voices like the people who marched for Medicare for all. They're trying to disparage us, discredit us, and dismiss us, right? And we can't let that happen. I'm not going to let that happen. I got a bigger fucking platform that Nathan J. Robinson or Ryan Grimm will ever fucking have in their life. So and Cenk Uygur too. I'm fucking kicking their ass. I have 3 times the live stream viewers that the Young Turks have since the Young Turks went right wing. So the Young Turks started taking corporate money. They started turning their back on Bernie, pushing Hillary Clinton. Now they push Neera Tanden. Cenk Uygur's in bed with Neera fucking Tanden and Pod Save America guys who are anyway. So the point that's who we're up against. All these fucking pukes who are controlled opposition, who are standing in our way. Imagine if those people put the weight of their organization behind the Medicare for All march, they put the weight of their organizations behind Force the Vote. We could actually get somewhere in this country, but we have to first fight the fake left. We have to first fight the controlled opposition. And that's what's slowing us down. That's why people weren't in the street for those 50 city Medicare for All marches en masse. They had good crowds, but they could have been 10 times bigger. But people who consider themselves lefties with MSNBC contracts, The Intercept, the Young Turks, they were there shitting on it and making sure it wouldn't be a success. And that's how you know they're controlled opposition. And if you fucking think you're on the left or a progressive and you think the Young Turks are there to do your fucking bidding, you are woefully mistaken. Cenk Uygur makes $350,000 a year, lives in a $4 million fucking house, and is stopping you from making progressive progress at every fucking turn. Takes $24 million from right-wingers, and he doesn't give a shit about you. In fact, he'll call people like you, Nick, and people like me, right-wingers, for advocating for Medicare for All and calling out AOC and the squad. He'll never fucking call them out when it matters, ever. In fact, he was begging, I'm asking lovingly, please do something for the $15 minimum wage. Oh, come on. He was tweeting hashtag Kamala save us. He's a pathetic, spineless, nutless wonder who will ever fucking challenge power.
Man, so what you've been exposing, and the reason why these conversations have to be had, because we were talking about the class loyal leftists, and we talked about how they attack the movements, and it was very interesting to me. You said, and you brought up a good point. Where you say, can you imagine what if we actually united to actually support direct actions instead of having the privileged people who make 200, 400, 600,000 plus a year shitting on activists like Ryan Grimm? He was going after Savage Joy, who just a disabled activist, and how do people not see the class dynamics here?
That's right. And Ryan Grimm taking checks from 3 billionaires. I bet he makes $1 million a year himself, shitting on an activist who's disabled, who's trying healthcare, who doesn't have healthcare, who wants to get healthcare, and he's using the power of his platform to shit on them. That is fucking unbelievable. And the way these people are still allowed in polite society is mind-blowing to me. But I'm not going to allow it. I'm calling them out at every turn, and I hope you do too.
Yeah, we have to call it out because I thought we were supposed to be a class conscious movement. It seems like we're not. At least the privileged boutique left, they have no class analysis. They have no solidarity. They demand unity. And I always tell people, I said, fuck your unity. I don't want your unity. Give me solidarity. Unity is a tool of the ruling class. Civility politics is a tool of the ruling class. And this is what they impose on us. And they attack you. And they attack me. Trust me. They attack us for our tone. That's their only argument against us.
All they got is tone. That's what Nathan J. Robinson attacked me for, by tone. He was tone policing me. That's all they can do is make us seem like we're bad people and we're not nice. We're not polite. I'm fucking not polite. I don't give a shit. I'm not trying to make friends with anybody. I got enough friends and I've got a great career. I don't fucking need to be doing this. I'm doing this because I care, because I have a personal experience, because I know people who are going bankrupt, because I know people who can't get health care, because I was one of them myself.
Yeah, and the point I make, because they tone police me all the time. I'm like, dude, I'm just some black dude living in Kansas City. I have no Ivy League education. I'm just some guy who talk about politics, and this is how we talk about politics. And all they do is tone police us. And the progressive movement, as it is right now, is a group of privileged, mostly white people who tone police black leftists, and they tone police us at Hampton Leftists. They get mad, not at the content of what we say, it's how we say it. So instead of actually fighting for the black community, what they actually do is just tone police the black community and demand us to fall in line behind the white saviors. Fall behind and support Joe Biden. Trust me, shut up and trust the plan. That's what they tell us, and I don't agree with that method. They get upset at us because we do not buy the nonsense electoral strategy of taking over the Democrat Party. It does not make sense. We tried it. It's a failed strategy, and there's countless reasons why. What we advocate for is building actual mutual aid societies, actually finding a way to survive this late stage capitalist hellhole police state. And you mentioned Ryan Grimm, so he was on Frank Analysis and they was having the conversation, and Frank brought up the same thing I just did, and he mentioned mutual aid and the importance of mutual aid. And Ryan Grimm was like, mutual aid, you mean charity? This is charity, they're not structural change. This take shows the class difference, and there's no class analysis there. So allow me to explain the difference between mutual aid and charity that apparently Ryan Grimm doesn't understand.
Of course he doesn't understand, because he's never needed either of them.
Exactly. So that's why I do it as a class analysis. So to me, it's not about the drama. It's about the issues. As a left movement, we're supposed to be about actually doing class analysis. So when you're doing mutual aid, the primary difference, to keep it very simple, mutual aid is horizontal. Charity, top down. Charity usually ran by oligarchs, the business class. They use that tax write-offs. They can use that organizations, or it's any concept in which the power transfer from the top to the bottom. So guess what? You know why I tell you guys not to donate to Justice Democrats anymore? Because the Justice Democrats is a top to bottom organization. You donate to the Justice Democrats, and you pretty much paying the salary of people like Jeff Weaver, who are not actually fighting for you. So with mutual aid, you're building horizontal structures of solidarity. So these structures of solidarity is what we need to go on strikes. This is how we actually have our everything in line in order to start a general strike, in order to resist the late stage capitalism that we live in. But Ryan Grimm, he was like, "Oh, mutual aid not that important." and to give you guys a real example of what I'm talking about. So I think giving an example will give you guys a good idea. And what we advocate for, KC Tenants is one of the most underrated organizations nationally right now. Out of Kansas City, during the COVID crisis, they actually was negotiated and got homeless people hotels during the COVID crisis. And they actually did a lot of direct actions to shut down evictions. So this is what the left should be doing right now. We should be in a constant state of organizing strikes. So what I always tell people, if you are like a single mother, and I'll give this example because it's easy to relate to this. If you're a single mother with 2 kids and you're still socially conscious, and you have let's say you got $10 a month to get to social causes, when you give money to an organization like KC Tenants that's actually helping people get homes, when you donate to Rome's Tour for the Poor, is actually feeding homeless people, Affinity's mutual aid group in DC, because a lot of people are stuck in 2015. We already are in the climate crisis right now. We are going through a class war right now where trillions of dollars was siphoned from our community, and we have people living in massive poverty. Screw the poverty guidelines, because those poverty guidelines are nonsense. I covered that multiple times on my show. So, and I also want to make this point. I'll pass it right back to you, Jimmy. We wrap up here pretty soon. And this is why the fight against the police state is very important, because it's actually a class issue as well. This is why the people like Ryan Grimm are not that interested in this fight. Because the reason why Joe Biden and Democrats are expanding the police state, because they know that we have millions of people that are about to go homeless. There has been an increase of shoplifting because people cannot feed themselves. People are getting to the point where we are getting real desperate, and they know things are going to get worse. So they are expanding the police force and the forces of oppression in order to get ready to maintain social order. So while I tell people the Democrats know exactly what they're doing, everything that's happening is not accident. Sorry, Jim, I tossed it right back to you, but I think that's a crucial point to make. And this is why I tell people we got to build mutual aid networks to survive what's coming. But what's your thought, Jimmy?
The cops are not there to provide you aid, mutual aid, or any kind of aid. Look what they were doing to Ida. They're there to protect property. That's what the cops are there to do. They're protecting property, and that's why we're investing more into the police. That's why they just gave them $2 billion more a year. Because they. Did
you see when they were forcibly evicting homeless people off the beaches in California, and they were pointing ARs at them, and they are getting ready for that. That's the point of what they're doing. It's not by accident. But sorry, Jimmy, finish your thought.
Yeah, and again, they're not trying to get right now. They're not trying to get rid of the private prison system. Joe Biden's he's the architect of it. I mean, what right now the Biden administration in California, they passed a law that made it illegal to put immigrants in private prisons or hold detainings. Guess what? Joe Biden's in court trying to overturn that law right now. That's what Joe Biden. So when you vote for Joe Biden, Who do you think you're voting for? Did Joe Biden get rid of ICE? Joe Biden did not get rid of ICE. And I'll guarantee you, Joe Biden's going to have more kids in cages and deport more Hispanics than Donald Trump did. I will fucking guarantee you that that is going to be the case. Just like I guaranteed people that voting for fucking Hillary Clinton was not going to make it better for immigrants. She was the biggest enemy of immigrants. She was for the border wall. And by the way, Joe Biden was still in court just a few months ago, kicking people out of their houses to make room for the border wall that he was continuing to build.
Yeah, that's unbelievable, said, because you have these same people who kind of neglect these state violence issues. It's getting worse. Like, the police state is actually expanding under Joe Biden. Now, I mentioned before, you had the police that was forcibly evicting people off of beaches at gunpoint. And we're going to see more of that. That is what the ruling class is doing right now. And now, speaking on the Supreme Court, because I always find it funny because they always want to toss this. We can talk about this here quickly, and we wrap up here in about the next 15 minutes or so. Because I want to talk about the eviction moratorium and the homelessness crisis that's happening. It doesn't make any sense why they would toss this to the Supreme Court when this is just another broken institution. And what I highlight on my show, I'm sure you mentioned it as well, they knew since June that this was going to happen. So I actually was surprised at the time, because I'm like, I actually didn't expect the Supreme Court, because they actually ruled in your favor first, Democrats. You guys don't even realize that. They actually said, we don't agree on the principle of the CDC allowing the eviction moratorium to continue, but we are going to allow that to happen because you guys had to have a congressional solution. So instead of just blaming the Supreme Court, it's actually on Congress. And this is actually a pattern that people need to see through. And this is why the red-blue game is obsolete. And I'll pass it right back to you here, Jimmy. But they always toss these crucial issues to the Supreme Court. Whenever there's a major battle, they toss it to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court is deeply corporate, and it always will be corporate. There is not a time in which the progressives ever had a favorable outcome in the Supreme Court. It's not going to happen. Ruth Bader Ginsburg actually sided with the doctrine. She used the doctrine of discovery to side with big oil over indigenous people. So they've always been a corporate institution. So why would you toss that power to them? It's because the Democrats are paid off by the landlords. They are landlords.
They are landlords.
Go ahead, Jimmy. Go ahead. I'll pass it to you.
So this whole idea, again, that's the beauty for the oligarchy and the establishment of a two-party system. You can always blame the other side, but when they're both working for the same people. So we only have one party in America. It's the corporate, military, industrial, Wall Street party. That's it. They both serve the same fucking people. And it's not when you cross the party. You're allowed, Joe Manchin's allowed to cross the party left and right. He's not allowed to cross the donors. So that's why. So when he's crossing the party, he's crossing he's not actually crossing the party. It's a big fucking scam. Right. So they know they have just enough Democrats always to kill a bill, or just enough Democrats always to pass a bill. Just enough. If you're going to pass a bill that helps Wall Street and the oil companies, they'll find just enough Democrats. And if you want to kill a bill that helps the left and progressive and workers, they'll find just enough Democrats like Joe Manchin, Kristen Sinema. They'll always find enough Democrats to do that. But they'll still somehow make you think it's just that person inside the Democratic Party. It's not the Democratic Party itself, right? Because remember what Bernie Sanders said he would do. He would go to Joe Joe Manchin's district and do a rally and call him out. Of course, he's not doing that. Bernie Sanders will never do that. The fucking Democrats will never do that because they work for the same people. And Danny Haiphong from the Black Agenda Report makes this point. He said they have a more effective government in China that actually helps people and gets them out of poverty. Why? Because if something doesn't go right, they got nobody else to blame except that one party. So they actually hold their leaders accountable a lot more than their leaders get held accountable in the United States. Because when something goes wrong in America, they go, oh, it's the Democrats. Oh, it's the Republicans. Oh, Barack Obama couldn't do anything because they filibuster. Oh, that they always have someone else to blame when there's only one party rule. We only have one party rule in reality, but we have two parties on the surface. If we had one party on the surface, we'd probably get a lot more accountability from our politicians. But because they have this duopoly set up, and every time somebody tries to start a third party, they fucking infiltrate them and make them look like there's some kind of communist or there's some kind of right winger. That's what they're trying to do right now with the People's Party. They're trying to make it look like somehow people with no money and no power who are actually challenging the establishment, they're the problem. Somehow they are the problem. And then you get stupid fucking podcast hosts to repeat that shit too. Really, you're going to go after people with no money and no power. Fantastic. How about you wait till they have money and power and then go after them, you fucking useless tools on purpose?
Yeah, you keep bringing so many good points. I got to expand on this because what I always try to tell people to do on the left, the left is terrible at framing the political discussions. What I do is just simply reframe stuff. I don't buy their narrative. The narrative that going around right now, and I challenge this all the time, when they say, "Oh, you got to fix the filibuster. If we fix the filibuster, that'll fix a lot of the problems." And my thing is like, will it really? Because had the filibuster ever stopped the ruling class from getting what they wanted, they will always find a way to get the votes. And the best example that we have right now is Kristen Sinema. Because Kristen Sinema started out as a Green Party progressive, and now she tweeted in 2014 that she supported a $15 minimum wage. So she supported the $15 minimum wage until the Democratic Party needed her not to. You guys notice that? And they pick these areas that are purple states or conservative states, and they rotate their Congress people and their senators based on the votes they need to get the corporate agenda passed. So it doesn't matter what your position used to be. Kristen Sinema may have supported a minimum wage increase, but since they needed her to vote no and they needed her to be against the minimum wage, it's always funny how that works out. So I always believe, and you're 100% on point, they will always get what they want. And even regardless of the Supreme Court, my thing is, and this is why I will vote for the Green Party, I didn't trust the neoliberals with the Supreme Court justice either. They all support corporatists in the first place, and they are no different from that elite institution. Now, this is the last thing I want to point out, because this says a lot about the Biden administration. The Biden administration actually tried to illegally seize people's guns and violate the Fourth Amendment. And their guys, they said they was going to use this to fight white supremacy so they can go into white nationalist homes and take their guns. And I was flagging this because every time they use racism, whenever they use terrorism as a justification to expand the state, they turn and use that against black people. So if you're supportive of that, and you think they're not going to use that to seize and disarm the black working class, you are deeply unserious. But what does that say about the Biden administration? Now, the Supreme Court, the extreme far right-wing Supreme Court, shut that down because they're like, "Are you out of your mind? Do you know what this actually would mean?" And I covered this on my show. So even though they lost that Supreme Court case, to me, that's still a very important case study because this shows the mindset of the Biden administration. This shows why they continue to push stuff like Russiagate and January 6th, because they need justification to expand the state in order to continue to disarm us, to censor us. Like, this conversation go on and on, but I'm gonna give you the last thoughts, and I appreciate you hanging in there with me, Jimmy. Anything you want to expand on that? Because I can talk about this all day, because they expand the state, and this is the new struggle. Everyone want to focus on left versus right, red versus blue. And I don't play this partisan nonsense because the new struggle is against the national security state, against the police state is ramping up against us, against the attacks on our Fourth Amendment, our Second Amendment, and the First Amendment that is active right now. The Supreme Court shut Biden down in that case, but are they going to keep doing that? We need a proletariat revolution. And this is what I was about to say this earlier, but this is what the boutique left, they don't want us to talk about. I want us to completely divest from electoral politics, build structures where we can survive on ourselves, feed ourselves. We can actually hold strikes like general strikes and completely disengage from the electoral politics nonsense. And you can use third parties as a way to advocate and elevate that, because there's literally nothing that stops third parties from helping organize these kind of things. So if you build up a people party, I like a socialist approach of a Green Party, but you can work as a team, as a left movement, to shut shit down as an organization. That's what we want to promote. That's why we have the General Strikes panel that we want to promote on this show. We're going to have the conversations. We're going to have a roundtable where we just bring union leaders, anyone who's interested in talking about the concept, because the left should be in a constant state of striking. The boutique left want us to pay attention to electoral politics and only electoral politics. And they always question me, the Ryan Grins, they always say, why do you say we should divest in electoral politics? Exactly what I'm talking about. We need to build a proletariat revolution, that we actually have a general strike because of the police state, because of ICE, because of the corporate bailouts. And we shut down society and we do not take no for an answer. Our first attempt may fail, but that's how we build a coalition. There's an October general strike that's going on right now. They may fail, but we need to build a coalition. We need to continue to strike, because that's our only focus should be right now. So we need a proletariat revolution. We need A1 support mutual aid. And I want to leave it with that. And I'll toss to Jimmy. Like, any last thoughts? And we wrap up.
I'll just say that until people understand that voting for the Democratic Party is a vote against your own interest, nothing will change. Until people stop donating to the Democratic Party and the Justice Democrats, nothing will change. Until people realize that you don't change the Democratic Party changes you, which is exactly what happened with every single member of the Justice Democrats, including Jamal Bowman, who got rid of one of the biggest Israel supporters, and then he turned into an Israel supporter himself. He had to signal immediately to the establishment, I'm on board with Israel, don't worry about it, even though I got rid of this guy who was the biggest Israel supporter. So again, until people realize that they're using identity politics to trick you, because that's what's happening, right? So they're not gonna give you a person. The Democratic Party is not going to give you a person that's actually going to fight for you or advocate for you. What they're going to do is give you a person who looks like you, who's also going to oppress you at the behest of the oligarchy, which is what they're doing. That's exactly, they're voting with Nancy Pelosi, which means they're voting with Goldman Sachs, which means they're voting against you. And that's exactly, and they won't use the power they have. So until people realize that voting for a Democrat is a dead end, nothing will change. And because as soon as they realize that the Democrats and Republicans are not going to help them and they all serve the same people, until they realize that, they won't get out in the streets. They won't do strikes because they'll still think someone's advocating for them. So we have to disabuse progressives of the idea that the Justice Democrats or any Democrat is advocating for you. And the people running around giving Joe Biden tongue baths right now are doing an incredible disservice to the fucking left, to the progressive movement, but they don't give a shit. Those people are there, they're controlled opposition, and they're there to make sure progressive change does not happen, and they're doing it willingly. So right now, that's the message I want people to understand. As Lawrence O'Donnell wasn't lying, Lawrence O'Donnell committed a gaffe. And what is a gaffe in Washington? When you tell the truth accidentally. And so Lawrence O'Donnell, in a documentary about Ralph Nader, told everybody in the world, because he was the chief of staff to, I forget, a senator, I'm blanking on his name. So he knows how the Senate works. He knows how politics, Monahan. He was the chief of staff to Monahan. And so he said to the camera on the documentary, until you are willing to withhold your vote for the Democratic Party, you will never be able to pull the Democratic Party to your left. They don't have to listen to you. I know it firsthand. When I was the chief of staff for that senator, I never had to listen to anybody on the left ever. And until you withhold your vote, they won't. So we have to withhold our vote for at least an election cycle. What I was telling people during Hillary Clinton, when she was running against Donald Trump, I was telling people that if a pollster calls you and asks who you're voting for, tell them you're voting for Jill Stein. Why? Because that will put pressure on the Democrats to fucking move left. What did they do instead? Everybody said, I'm voting for Hillary Clinton, and the Democrats moved right. She picked Tim Kaine, who right now everybody's up their fucking ass about the abortion law in Texas. Tim Kaine was anti-choice. Tim Kaine was against abortion and a women's right to choose. That was her fucking vice presidential pick. He was also anti-union. That's what the Democrats did because everybody said they were going to vote for them. So if everybody would have withheld their vote who got fucked over by the DNC and Hillary Clinton, meaning the Bernie people, Hillary Clinton would have lost by 10 to 15 percentage points. And that would have changed the Democratic Party forever because they could have never given us Joe Biden 4 years later. They could have never did Russiagate for 5 fucking years. They would have had to address real problems or go to the dustbin like the Whigs. That's what would have happened. But they didn't do that. Every progressive who got fucked over by the DNC and Hillary Clinton voted for her anyway. And we got Donald Trump anyway. So if they would have withheld their vote then, we would have still got Donald Trump, but we could have had a real fucking difference electorally in this country. And now we got Joe Biden, who's even worse than Hillary Clinton. He's worse than she was. So that's what you get for voting Democrat. And until people realize this, there will be no direct action. There will be no change in this country. We've got to tell people, we've got to communicate the idea that the Democratic Party, including the Justice Democrats, are not your friends. They're not your allies. They're the allies of the establishment and their own careers. And stop fucking donating to them and stop voting for them, and then we can have change.
Remember how mad people got at Ice Cube for flowing that idea? And
that's right.
There are a lot of people especially in the black community, who's starting to realize they were sold a can of good, especially with the Democrat Party siding with the police state in the open faction. If only there was a black leftist they could have listened to who was telling you guys why you shouldn't vote for Jim Crow Joe. And I explained the same concept that you laid out. That if we as black people vote for the Democratic Party without any ask, why would they back up our community? It doesn't make any sense. This is why the state of Black America is where it is right now. This is why we continue to have our wealth siphoned from the police state, with Kamala Harris support, with civil asset forfeiture, with Joe Biden continuing to expand the police state, even though black people organized and vote for them. Because they say, okay, the black people are going to vote for them in 2022 and 2024, so they have no reason to go to you. And I said this, and people was like, oh, you're a secret Donald Trump supporter. Like, this is a basic strategy. This is not even that complex. Once again, I'm just a college dropout. And even I understand this. It's not hard to understand. They're just sheep herding you and lying to you on purpose. What would you about to say, Jimmy?
No, you just have to remember that when the positions that you advocate for are the positions that got Fred Hampton killed and are the positions that got Martin Luther King Jr. killed. As soon as Martin Luther King Jr. started to advocate for poor people, black and white, and advocating for ending the wars, they killed him. And that's not hyperbole. That's exactly what happened. So when if you follow in the footsteps of Fred Hampton, which I see that you are, guys like Ryan Grimm and the Young Turks and people with MSNBC contracts are going to smear you and attack you because they are the establishment working for billionaires to keep the status quo. And if you come along and you have a good idea that can puncture the status quo, they're going to dismiss you, discredit you, and smear you. And that's exactly what The Intercept is there for. And that's what The Intercept is, Ryan Grimm and the Young Turks, that's what they're here for. They are fucking controlled opposition, and everybody's got to realize that so we can get past them and actually organize together without them.
Yep, and these same people fight against all these actions. These people,
what action has Ryan Grimm, the Intercept, or the Young Turks ever advocated for? What action? They were against forced to vote. They were against forcing the vote for a $15 minimum wage. They're against the Medicare for All marches. What the fuck are they for? Fundraising. That's what they're doing. They're fundraising and calling everybody to their left a right winger. That's what the fucking establishment does. That's what controlled opposition does. That's what the Young Turks is. David Dole, Mike Figueroa, Buck and Brian Grimm. That's the MSNBC contracts. That is exactly what's fucking going on. There's controlled opposition on the left, and we're calling it out. And of course, they're going to smear you because you're actually going in the tradition of Fred Hampton and Martin Luther King Jr. The left turned on Martin Luther King Jr. at the end. You know that. I've covered that on my show. Op-eds in the New York Times about how he's wrong about Vietnam and he shouldn't turn against the country like that. I mean, they turned on him when he told the truth about imperialism. And that is what's going to happen to you. It's already happening. And of course, it's happening to me, but they can't control me because I'm not looking for a job from one of those pukes. I'm not looking for a job at The Intercept. I'm not looking for a job at the Washington Post. And you can see the lefty YouTubers who are looking for those jobs because they can't support themselves doing their own fucking thing. So you see those people out there who fake left but actually are propping up the people who are the controlled opposition. Look for those people too.
Well said, Jimmy. Yeah. Like I said, we can go all day on these topics. I appreciate you coming on. The same people that attack me and smear me, I guarantee you, they will smear Fred Hampton as some unreasonable tanky if he was alive today. So I'm gonna end it with that thought. Like, just know all the people that Jim and I call these people out as the white martyrs that MLK and Malcolm X warned us about. They are, and once again we can go all day on these. I can talk about these topics all day. This was a blast, Jimmy. Last word on anything you want to promote. Once again, thank you for coming on, Fred Hampton Leftists. That's something else that a lot of these boutique leftists, they will never come on and help smaller shows and black independent content creators. So before you want to call anyone else a racist, is the racist the people who don't talk to black people? So we appreciate that you at least willing to have these conversations because a lot of the boutique left aren't. they rather dodge and avoid these conversations. So I appreciate.
Kasparian and Cenk Uygur won't come on your show to defend imperialism. They won't.
Never in a million years. They blocked me.
So they smeared Julian Assange, and I pointed that out. Ryan Grimm, of course, won't fucking ever answer for that, and he won't go on a show that will make him answer for that. Just like Young Turks, Cenk Uygur won't go on a show that makes him answer for that. Anna Kasparian won't. These are corporate cowards. These are people. I'll go on any show, anytime, anywhere, except for people who bad faith attack me on the regular. and have MSNBC contracts. That's I'm not going to prop up somebody else who's a bad faith actor, but I will go on and destroy fucking Ryan Grimm or the Young Turks or any other motherfucker. No problem. I got nothing to hide. I got nothing to be afraid of because I'm on the right side of the issues. You know what's funny is I have lots of friends who used to be at MSNBC, who used to be at CNN, who I talk to all the time. And they all said to me around Forced to Vote, why would they choose to attack you when you're on the right side of the issue? And I go, because they're paid to and they're fucking stupid. That's why. Why would Cenk Uygur tell everybody that Kevin McCarthy could become speaker when everybody knew he couldn't? Because he was signaling to his donors. It doesn't, look, I'm willing to lie for you. That's what I'm willing to do. That's what we're up against.
Thank you for coming on once again, Jimmy Dore. One last thing I want to say, and before I end the live stream, but thank you for coming on, Jimmy. The General Strike Summit. This is something, and hopefully we can get maybe you guys involved because we're serious about the General Strike.
Is that Sabby? Is that Sabby?
Yeah, that's Sabby.
You know this about her, but she's a racist and a sexist.
Well, that what they was always. I seen people call Sabby that. And people attack us as that. But what we talk about here, this is the idea that we have because we are more than just podcasters. We want to talk about general strikes because people always say it's hard to do. Oh, general strikes is hard to do. So we want to start the conversation, have like a 3-day event where we bring a lot of different minds to talk about what it means to hold a general strike, labor issues. So I just want to bring it up now because it's something that we like. Check out Compton J. We did a stream last night to talk about this because I'm not just saying this. Like I'm dead serious, and we gotta do whatever it takes. And this is hard. I know that starting a general strike is hard, and it may fail the first or 2 times, but we gotta start now. So the idea is we getting together for 3 days, talk about this issue, bring labor issues. So hopefully we can have some input for you guys as well. But thank you for coming on, Jimmy, and sticking with us.
Before I forgot to say this. So people like to say Bernie did pull this shit when he did that interview with Crystal Ball. He said, how do you know Joe Biden isn't negotiating behind the scenes for this stuff? How do you know Joe Biden isn't pushing in private, in secret? Well, let me tell you something, Bernie, you fucking liar. You know that that's not how democracy works. Democracy isn't based on trust. Democracy is based on mistrust, which is why we have transparency. And if you're advocating for me, you better do it out in fucking public.
Man, you about to set me off again, Jimmy. You about to set me off again. But yeah, we can talk about this kind of stuff all day. But I'll let you go.
I look forward to coming back on soon.
Yeah, absolutely, man. This was very fun, man. Thank you, Jimmy. Have a good one.
Care.
So one thing I want to talk about before I officially wrap up the stream, I appreciate everyone for watching. If you are a new viewer, hit the bell, subscribe. We've been throttled pretty badly, so hopefully you guys enjoy the show. And as I mentioned before, Hampton Leftists, our organization, we starting off as a show on here on YouTube. A lot of us are poor and disenfranchised, so we don't have a lot of resources. So, but as Hampton Leftists continue to grow, we are more than just podcasters. We want to organize and help build awareness towards stuff like general strikes, towards the mutual aid programs. If you have a local KC tenants that's fighting for tenants' rights in this homelessness crisis, we want to prop that up. I want to prop up KC tenants in any of these direct mutual aid. We have Rome that's doing tour for the poor. He's going to bring that up again very soon because there are a lot of people, they just love to talk about the issues and they stay in their air-conditioned studios. They live in giant mansions and big houses in LA or whatever. We actually want to be on the street, and at Hampton Leftists grow, you're going to see me actually showing up at strikes, protests. Make sure you guys check out the End the Wars protest. They actually planned it September 11th. So support the RJ had Magnus on, and they was talking about that. So make sure you guys show support to the End the Wars protest that's happening September 11th, and also the General Strike Summit. If you guys have not seen, check out the stream that CJ did yesterday on Straight Out Politics, where he talked about the General Strike in more detail. And this is the kind of activities that we want to promote. Like we really do believe that we need to start fighting right now against late stage capitalism, because it's never too early to start the fight, because things are going to get bad. The climate crisis is going to continue to get worse. But we also have a pretty busy day today. Jimmy Dore was really fun to talk to. I had so many things I wanted to talk to Jimmy Dore about. I didn't get a chance to cover. But he said he wanted to do this again. So hopefully we have Jimmy Dore back on the show as a regular guest. That'd be pretty cool. Because I got a lot of things that we didn't even cover that I could have covered. But Jimmy Dore, my plan was to just let him go. Because Jimmy Dore can rant, and I never fell for the fear mongering about him. And when it comes to challenging state violence, when it comes to challenging capitalism, I knew that he would bring good information because I wanted to keep this educational. That's what I focus on my show. I want to focus on the class war and foreign policy. And even though we call some people out, I don't think that's drama. I literally don't think that's drama. I think the left thought we was a bigger movement than we actually was. Like, there are a lot of shit libs that don't care about state violence. They don't care about foreign policy. They are deeply class loyal. So these are people that we have to call out. But other than that, I hope you guys I found it to be a substantive interview, because when I brought Jimmy Dore on for Hampton Leftists, that's what I wanted. I wanted it to be a substantive issue, a conversation. I'm not a prosecutor, so I'll just run and sit someone down and have a conversation and find common ground. And you guys know I want to burn down and I'll rage against the machine. And that's what Jimmy Dore is about. So there's no reason for us to have anything other than a great conversation like we had today. And my point is, check out the round table that we usually host every Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern. We're still going to have a round table today. So check that out, 4 p.m. Eastern, guys. Check that out. And also, we talk about Afghanistan a little bit here with Jimmy Dore. I still want to dive in that issue a lot more. But I'm lucky because I'm going to have Jackson Hinkle on tomorrow. I think me and Jackson Hinkle, we're doing tomorrow 2 p.m. Eastern time. So Jackson Hinkle came out with a video yesterday where he was saying what we were saying here at Hampton Leftists, where I was challenging the progressive talking points that Biden, or at least anti-imperialists, should be praising Biden for getting out of Afghanistan, even though he continuing covert operations. I was trying to tell Kyle Kalinske this. I was trying to tell people, like, I understand that you guys want to celebrate, but we got called how it is. The Afghanistan conflict is not over. We're just shifting our focus. And so Jackson Hinkle came out with a detailed video talking about that yesterday, and I'm going to have him back on Friend and Leftist to discuss that tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern. But check out our roundtable. Other than that, thank you everyone for the super chats. I apologize if I didn't get to all of them. But a lot of super chats was promoting the general strike at the end. So make sure you guys support your direct actions. And even if you have a criticism of your direct actions, which once again, there are criticisms that I have of the general strike that coming up, because I think it's too soon. We don't have the infrastructure that we need. But instead of being a critic of that program, join and help the program. Stop feeding into these CIA tactics that they use to divide the left. So once again, thank you all for checking us out. Support all these direct actions. You can support us. Go to fredhamptonleftist.com. You can tip us on Ko-fi. We are poor, working class. Like, we're not just podcasting. We're real activists. Like, Finney is doing direct mutual aid. Rome is traveling the tour for the poor. And I want to cover these strikes, and we want to expand. So that would any support and solidarity will go to, because all our content is free otherwise. So thank you guys for watching. Jimmy was fun to talk to. But stay tuned. Roundtable coming up here in about 90 minutes. Take care, guys.